So one narrative right now in American politics is that the Democrats are kind of in disarray. They're just not getting it together in terms of putting their party together and their messaging together for the 2026 midterms, let alone 2028 for president. And one of the big problems here is that they don't know how to talk to men. Well, they have a brand new hero now who it looks like has figured out the best way to talk to men. His name is Pete Buttigieg. And he grew a beard and everything. Now, apparently, Pete Buttigieg believes that the best way to communicate to men in American politics is to warn them about what Republicans will do to their porn and their gay marriages. I wish I were making this up, but that's literally what he said. I'll play it for you in a second, but here he was on the Bulwark podcast with Tim Miller. By the way, let me just say, I could be wrong about this. I don't know. I got a podcast. I do a video streaming show. My audience, I got a lot of men in my audience. I could be wrong. Like I said, these guys, they're a lot smarter than I am, okay? But I think if you want to appeal to male voters and sort of retool and reposition how you're coming across to the men, maybe Tim Miller with his little puka shell necklace on the Bulwark might not be the best platform. But what do I know? Let's see what Pete had to say.
Look, I mean, there's, Democrats have created this impression, I think partly because of the way we feel and talk about Trump, have created this impression that translates into the way we feel and talk about people who supported him. And that's the thing that I think really is a cultural struggle in our party. There's this sense of condescension. I mean, if I hear one more time, like a well-off liberal doctor or lawyer saying, that quote unquote, these folks are voting against their economic interests, I just wonder whether they ever contemplated the fact that somebody could turn around and say, so are you. There's a condescension that is imputed to Democrats that I think we really need to deal with. So much of politics is not just how you make people feel, how you make people feel about themselves. And so much of what they think of you comes down to what they think you think of them. And largely because of our very justified horror at the abuses of Donald Trump as a candidate and as a president, we've said and done things that make voters feel like we're talking about them when we're talking about him.
Oh, Tim is shocked by that because Tim's actually kind of the poster boy for that kind of behavior. I've been telling you this forever, that when they talk about Donald Trump and call him all the names that they do, they are in fact talking about you. They're angry at you. I mean, listen, Biden himself, when he gave all of his speeches, as did Kamala Harris, they were constantly talking about how Trump supporters were the biggest threat to our democracy. Not Trump supporters, MAGA Republicans, right? That's what they would always say. So of course they're talking about you. And now Pete Buttigieg is trying to walk that back. I mean, he is right about how condescending Democrats are to people who vote for Donald Trump. I mean, look at that face. I mean, that's if you actually Google the word condescending, this is what shows up in Google Images, even Bing. But I love Pete Buttigieg trying to sound all smart about this, that there's this imputation of condescension, right? Isn't that what he used the word imputation? Yeah, that this whole idea of Democrats being condescending has been imputed to them. No, it's not imputed, pal. No, this hasn't been assigned to Democrats through some inference that they're condescending. No. It hasn't been imputed. You are embodying condescension. This hasn't been thrust upon you, Pete. You and your party have participated in that condescension. Look at Tim Walz. The selection of Tim Walz as the running mate. We need to have a manly Midwestern white man who likes football and wears plaid shirts. That's the way to appeal to. This entire conversation about how they can better communicate to male voters is, in fact, condescending in and of itself. And I'll get to that in a minute. I will. Because I have a secret for Pete and for Kamala and for Tim and for Gavin and for Roe and for anyone else who wants to be president for the Democrats come 2028. I'm going to reveal a secret for you so that you can, in fact, begin communicating with us, because I feel like I can speak for male voters, considering I'm one of them. I'll reveal that secret in a sec. And also, Pete Buttigieg's bizarre idea that it's really all about porn and gay marriage. But first, a little bit more of Pete and Tim figuring out how best to talk to manly men.
I'm giving you a DeLorean. And we are going to go back to like right after Biden gets the nomination in 2020. So, you just endorsed him. He hasn't picked Vice President Harris yet. Where the world is our oyster. We're in the middle of COVID. And you're Pete from today. And you get to talk to Pete from back then. Or maybe Biden from back then. And you get to give them some advice. Give them some advice that would maybe prevent us from having this current president. What do you think you all should have done differently?
One, for the love of God, figure out a way to get the schools open sooner. We got very knee-jerk about this, and the costs were not just politically, but in a profound way. I think for the generation, the costs were profound, and I think anybody who was involved, who was, by the way, obviously doing their best to deal with a crisis that killed a million Americans.
Sure.
But I think most people involved would like to be able to have found a way to safely get more schools open more quickly.
This is a fascinating rewriting of history, and I got to jump in here. There's more to this. Trust me. We got plenty more. Figure out a way to get the schools open. Okay. First of all, fascinatingly, if you confront Fauci or anyone from the Biden administration about keeping schools closed, they'll claim that they never ordered the schools to be closed. We didn't do that. That was a state's thing. We didn't do it at all. So it's fascinating revelation here that Pete Buttigieg, a representative of the administration at the federal level for the Democrats as the Secretary of Transportation, is admitting that that was a mistake they made. Okay, so number one, that's a reversal of a denial that they constantly carried with them. Number two, what do you mean figure out a way? Figure out a way to get the schools open? Dude, Florida had their schools open. Texas had their schools open. Tennessee had their schools. State by state by state had their schools open. They figured it out. There was nothing to figure out. I'm going to give you a secret, Pete. Here's the secret sauce you needed to figure out how to get schools open. Stop listening to the teachers union. Because every single one of your pals in the Democrat Party who ran a state, a blue state, from Whitmer to Newsom to New York, Catherine, I forget her name, to Pritzker in Illinois, and on and on and on, they knew how to open the schools, Pete, because other states had done it. They willfully chose not to because they're in bed with the teachers union. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to let you get away with that one, but there's more.
Obviously,
that was a great first answer. I had no idea where there's so many ways you could have gone with that, but that's a good
I mean, from where I'm sitting, obviously pay more attention to the border. That's real. And that's going to be something that you can't just take your time to deal with.
Another quick insight here, which is fascinating. See, this question is of a political nature, right? Politically, if you could talk to Pete Buttigieg back then in 2020, 2021, what would you tell them now? And his answer is pay more attention to the border. You see, Pete Buttigieg back then was saying that the border was secure. Everyone in the Biden administration was lying and saying the border was secure. We have no chaos at the border. The border is secure. Everything's going swimmingly. Everything is perfect. So when he says do something about the border, does he mean, don't do what you did with the border? Because, see, they inherited a secure border. So when you say do something about the border, I think what you mean is don't touch the border, don't do anything, and don't change anything because everything was fine. But you see, they can't do that. because the whole way Biden and Kamala and Buttigieg and everyone else rode into office in 2020 is they were claiming that Trump had ruined the border, that he had set up death camps. He had done it, they called him frickin' Stalin, for God's sake, over securing the border. And now Pete's answer is, yeah, we should have been more Stalin-like, apparently. Sorry, not going to let you get away with it.
These are all things, by the way, that is super, policy-wise and politically, we have the benefit of hindsight to reflect a lot of this, right? 3, even though you spent your entire political lifetime believing that the economy and jobs are the same thing, and if you have lots of jobs, it's a good economy, and if you have a problem with jobs, it's a bad economy, remember that prices is just as big a part of the economy. It just hasn't come up much in the last 40 years, right? Those are some things I'd be whispering.
So what would you have done?
By the way, I'm sorry. Again, the rewriting of history and Tim Miller. See, this is why Pete won't come on this show, because if Pete Buttigieg gave me that answer, I would say, excuse me, Mr. Buttigieg, we can show you video after video after video during the 2024 presidential campaign where you were claiming that the economy was fine and that inflation wasn't a problem. And that you fixed everything having to do. You wouldn't even acknowledge that there was a problem with prices. So so were you lying then, or are you lying now? Because this guy was the loyal little soldier for Kamala Harris. And it's only now that he wants to be president in 2028 is he saying, oh, yeah, we were terrible. All these things that we did. Well, dude, you lied through your teeth at all of us, including to Tim Miller, who's very thoughtful right now. And I appreciate that, Tim.
What would you have done differently on prices then? What could you have done differently?
Look, no country was able to save their economy from COVID without getting into some inflation, some serious and painful inflation. But I do think that there were a lot of moments where people kind of waved it away in the first year or two, even just like the conversation about it, the focus. It is true that we had no choice but to bring back the economy by any means necessary. I mean, we forget how grave the threat of a depression was in 2020.
Oh my God. He's acting like he wasn't the one who was waving it away. He's acting like he wasn't part of the administration. By the way, the reason that we had the inflation that we had was not because of COVID. It was because of the giant $1 trillion bill that Joe Biden insisted on, with all of the money that got spent to people who were still not working, not because there were no jobs, but because the Biden administration insisted that the country stay in lockdown and everyone stay home. So he wanted to sign checks and give people their stimmies. That's why we had inflation. Economists were warning about it at the time. The lying and duplicity that you get from these politicians. I mean, listen, all politicians lie, but this is a heinous example. Which brings us to porn and gay marriage. Again, Tim Miller, Pete Buttigieg figuring out the best way for Democrats to finally reach those male voters that they lost this time around. Here's Pete's answer. He's got it all figured out. Go ahead, Pete. How are you going to do it?
Of course, we should be talking about how, if Speaker Johnson got his way, it wouldn't be possible, not just for gay people to get married, but for straight people to get divorced, let alone like birth control or how he would want to regulate porn or whatever most people would have a problem with.
There you go. He is the shining light of the Democrat Party. You really want to reach men, you let him know that if Speaker Mike Johnson had his way, no more gay marriage, no more divorces, and he'd regulate your porn. Remember earlier in this interview when he said that there's this condescension that's imputed on Democrats? Years from now, he'll say, oh, well, there was a condescension imputed upon me when I tried to, figure out how to reach young men voters who were worried about their future, because somehow people thought that I just assumed that young men only cared about porn. Because that's literally what he just said. And, well, nothing's being imputed on you, Pete. That was inherent. That's in your heart. That's what you think of men. That's what you think of young men and their priorities. Let me have my porn. Let's check in on how the new Democrats plan for communicating to voters is going, especially young male voters. I promised you that I'm going to give you the secret sauce. I'm going to give you and reveal to you exactly the first step to get to these male voters. But first, let's see how they're doing on their own. Here's a podcast. Because all you hear is, oh, we got to go on these bro podcasts. We got to do our podcast and we got to communicate with these guys because we're just not getting our message out. Our message is great. We just need to figure out the right platform to get our message out. Okay, so these two certainly seem like the solution to the problem. Here's the podcast. Mika, is it Mika or Micah? Do we even know? First of all, I apologize, and I swear I don't want to misgender anybody, and I don't want to but I can't even. I'm assuming that that's a guy, Mika, and he's on this woman's podcast, but he is quite possibly the most effeminate-looking man I've ever seen. And look at the rundown here. The headline, the show title is "How Do Dems Win Back Young Men?" We'll start with how Dems are wrong about men. Then we'll talk about messaging to men. Then we'll talk about making men feel welcome, meeting men where they're at. Then we'll talk about inclusive messaging, and then our simple policy platform. Yeah, that'll do the trick. They don't need my advice. You know what? Maybe I won't give you the secret sauce anymore. Well, all right. Well, one more. Khanna. I'm told that Khanna is one of the sensible guys. He's a California Democrat in the House. He's probably going to run either for president or for governor of California. And he's been out front trying to talk real about how Democrats, are missing the mark here. And Lawrence Jones this morning on Fox and Friends, you got to give him credit. He's going on Fox, right? So that tells you he's trying to communicate, he's trying to meet men where they are, right? So he was asked specifically about the messaging problem that Democrats have. Listen to Khanna's answer here.
One thing I always appreciate about you is you're willing to talk to the other side. But is Rahm Emanuel right here? Has your party become too woke, too non-masculine, and not talking with people about the things that matter?
No, he's dead wrong. Look, this is the party of FDR. We did originally make in America. We industrialized the entire country. It's the party that has guaranteed Americans Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid. I'm calling for a new economic patriotism so we become a manufacturing superpower, so we have high-paying jobs and build wealth in every community and have a Marshall Plan for America. The history of the Democratic Party, it's a great party.
There you go. So we're not too woke. We haven't gone too feminine. We're a great party. Just look what we did 80 years ago under FDR. Just look what we did 60 years ago under LBJ. And what did he say? We industrialized the country. Oh, okay. Look at what we did 125 years ago in the industrial age. That's who we are. I don't know. Maybe it's me. But running on the New Deal and the Great Society might not be the solution for Democrats. Yeah, Rahm Emanuel, who's also running for president, suggests that the party has gone too woke and has become too feminized. Which, by the way, if you look at the statistics, it's kind of true. I mean, single women is their single greatest voting bloc right now. Married women go Republican. Married men go Republican. Single men, by a smaller margin, go Republican. My theory there is that a lot of single men want to vote Democrat because they're trying to get the single women. But then once they get married, along with the women, they vote Republican. But here's my solution, okay? This is my recommendation to Khanna. Okay, you want to communicate to young men and communicate that you're not woke. Don't lead with FDR and LBJ. Okay, that ain't going to do the trick. Because sadly, most of those young men, the Gen Z men, they went to public schools run by you and your party, and they don't know who FDR and LBJ are because they went to, a teachers union school. So here's my suggestion. You want to prove, you want to prove to young men that you guys aren't woke and too effeminate. And to these two, you want to prove to young men that you're not too woke and not too effeminate. And while we're at it, to this guy. Do you want to prove that you're not too woke and too effeminate? And of course, Pete, if you want to prove to young male voters that you're not too woke and not too effeminate, I'm going to give you the secret sauce. I'm going to give you a suggestion, okay? Here it is. I need you to figure out how to answer this question. If you can answer this question publicly, on a public platform, on a podcast, on an interview, maybe even a speech, this will go a long way, but it depends on how you answer the question. Here it is. Pete, Ro, Tim, podcasters. The question is, can a man get pregnant? Can he? Can a man get pregnant? It's a yes or no question. No hemming and hawing, no equivocating, no explaining. Can a man get pregnant? And until any member of the Democratic Party, the people that we're talking about today, right now, or any of them, Gavin, Kamala, Tim Walz, Josh Shapiro, until any leading Democrat who wants to win national office can answer that question based on science, biology, and just factual truth that every single human being knows. Until they can answer that question accurately, they're going to be right where they are.